In this lesson, the penultimate video of the Nile Rodgers series, we're taking a look at the song Lose Yourself to Dance by Daft Punk. This is another song which is pretty much one progression the whole way through, but it is split into two guitar parts. Remember, you can download diagrams for all the chords in this series from my Patreon page. There's a link to that in the description. You'll also find a link to the full Nile Rodgers playlist. It definitely is worth checking out the first video where I go through a bunch of his chords, technique and theory to help prepare you for these song lessons. So for the intro of this song, we're just playing over the top of the bass line, and we're going to start on the high E string with third finger playing the 16th fret, and we're going to pull off to first finger on the 13th fret. Following this, we're moving to 16th fret on the B string. Then we've got a few staccato notes, which is 14, 16 on B. Bend 16 upper tone, back down to 16 natural, 14, and then second finger playing 15 on the G. So they're ending 14, 16, bend 16, 16 natural, 14, 15 on G. Put it all together. It might help to do all down picks to get that staccato sound. And I'm just kind of resting the pick on the strings in between each note so you get those gaps there. So we'll start with the low voicings of the chords first, just so you can get a better idea of the harmony and the progression. So the bass is starting by playing an E flat and then a G note in the intro, and that's actually the start of the progression. So it's a 4-chord progression and we're starting on the 3rd chord. So it's a little bit kind of odd in terms of where you come in, but it sounds pretty cool in the song. And once you're into them 4 chords, you can just keep cycling through them nice and easy. So the first chord that we're going to play is going to be a B flat minor, and we do this by barring the top 3 strings on the 6th fret. So imagine your full B minor chord, but you've just got the top 3 strings. And the rhythm, pretty much the same rhythm for everything in the song, so I'll teach you that now, and then you can apply that to all the chords, including the ones with a little melody in. So what we're doing, we're going to start with a fretted strum followed by 2 muted strums, so, and then another fretted strum followed by 2 muted strums. Now obviously because it's groups of 3, you're going to be flipping the strumming direction, so we've got down, up, down, up, down, up. We've seen this kind of thing quite a lot in the Nile Rodgers series, so if you've learned any of the other songs in this playlist, you might be quite familiar with this rhythm already, but that's the sound of the start of that bar. We then have 4 fretted strums, down, up, down, up. So that would be... We then have 2 muted strums, 2 fretted strums, and 2 muted strums. And that gives us the first bar. The rhythm for the second bar is exactly the same, so if I put the 2 bars together, and each chord lasts for 2 bars, so that's what you would play and then change onto the next chord. The next chord is an A flat using a C shape. So if you picture the full C shape, remember we're going to be using the root note on the A string. So remember that the 12th fret is the note A, so 1 fret lower than that, the 11th fret would be the root note. If we picture that full C shape, we've got the little finger playing the root note, but in the voicing that we're going to play, we don't actually have that root note, it's just an inversion. So we can actually take the little finger off and just bar the top 3 strings with the first finger. That way we get this chord. Sort of first inversion with the 3rd of the chord on the bottom. But it's still an A flat, so if we put those 2 chords together, we've got the B flat minor, up to the A flat, next chord is an E flat minor 7, just using like an A minor shape. So to get to this chord, all we have to do is slide down. So we're lined up, first finger's lined up with the 6th fret. It then has to bar the top 5 strings, so everything apart from the bottom string, which should be muted by the tip of the first finger. But the other fingers just stay in the same shape, which is nice and convenient. Same rhythm pattern. And then finally, we're finishing off with a G flat major 7. So this is going to be rooted on the 9th fret, still rooted on the A string, just using that normal major 7 A shape chord. So we've got the B flat minor on the top 3 strings. The little inversion of the C shape A flat. Remember, use the visualization of the little finger root note for that one. Then we're just sliding down, repositioning the first finger for the E flat minor 7. And then your kind of bog standard G flat major 7 up on the 9th fret there. And I play all those chords. As I mentioned earlier, it's strange that we're starting on the B flat minor because really that would be kind of halfway through the progression. You might find it easier to think of the E flat minor 7 as the first chord, especially when the vocals come in because they start on that chord, so that kind of feels like the start of each section. So let's take a look at those high chords which are kind of overdubbed to give it a bit more of a melodic quality. They sound like this. So each chord's got that nice little melodic movement in it. And the challenge just comes from finding ways to incorporate that into the full chord shapes. So we're starting with a B flat minor 7. We're going to use the 13th fret of the A string to root it. So remember that the 12th fret is the A, so if we move it up 1 fret, we get the B flat. It's just going to be your standard A shape. Obviously, because these chords are high, they're quite fiddly, so you've got to get your fingers close together. Make sure you can still hear every note in the chord. And then we're going to use little finger to play that 16th fret on the top string. And by putting that finger on and off, that's how we get that melodic movement. So exactly the same rhythm pattern that we had before, you've just got to pop that little finger down at the start of each bar to get the melody. The next chord is going to be the A flat. For this, what we're going to do is use kind of like an A flat 6 chord voicing. So if you imagine playing the A flat 6 rooted on the 11th fret of the A string, and then third finger is going to bar the top 5 strings. That's how to picture the chord, but we're not going to play the root note, we're going to do that bar with the first finger instead. So just to clarify, the first finger is barring the 13th fret on the top 4 strings here. And then same little trick with little finger. Actually, you could use 3rd finger instead here if you preferred. Because I'm not playing it in sequence, I've forgotten what I actually use. So. Yeah, I just keep using the little finger. Feels a little bit more natural because you've used that finger already in the B flat. But you could use the 3rd finger if it felt more comfortable. The next chord is the E flat minor 7. So if you imagine playing that full shape rooted on the 11th fret of the bottom string, that's where it's coming from, but we're going to get rid of the bottom 2 notes and we're just going to use the 1st finger to bar the top 4 strings. So it's very similar to the previous chord. Previously we just had 1st finger barring top 4 strings on 13th fret, now it's barring the top 4 strings on the 11th fret, so a pretty easy change. The tricky thing with this one is getting the stretch in with the little finger. And we also want to get 3rd finger playing that 13th fret again on the top string, and that keeps our little melody in there. So if we put all of that together, we've got the B flat minor. To like the A6 kind of shape. Slide the 1st finger down, keep the stretch with the little finger. That sorts out our E flat minor 7. Actually ends up being quite a nice kind of minor 9th voicing with that 1st finger playing the 13th fret on top there. And then the final chord is going to be that G flat major 7. So just to explain where the voicing for this one comes from, if we find the G flat root note on the bottom string up above the 12th fret, it would actually be the 14th fret. That's the note G flat, and then if we move to the octave of that note, so along 2 frets and up 2 strings, we're using the root note, which is the 16th fret of the D string. Pop your little finger on that note and then place the other fingers diagonally up the strings. That gives us that nice kind of E-shape major 7 voicing. But from here we want to incorporate our melody, so little finger moves to the top string and we just keep that melody in by taking the little finger on and off. So we're actually not playing the root note in this chord, but that's fine because the bass player can fill in the root note. You could, if you really wanted to, move the little finger from the 16th fret on the top string down to the D string and have like a... and then you're filling in that root note yourself whenever the top note's not being played. But you've got to be slightly careful with the strumming on that one because it's quite hard to get all the right strings muted. You kind of got to just be aiming for like the top 3 strings or so in this chord. But that's the full progression. So you've got the B minor 7 with the little finger jumping on the 16th fret to start with. Down to the A flat 6 shape. Down 2 frets for the E flat minor 7. And then that diagonal shape for the G flat major 7. And that fits on top of the chord progression that we looked at initially. So maybe get a looper pedal out, have a go at playing both parts, make them sync up, make it sound all nice, and that's the main groove for the tune. So I hope that gives you a few good options and enables you to enjoy jamming along with this track. Remember, you can download all the chord diagrams from my Patreon page and access the full Nile Rodgers playlist via the links in the description. If you enjoy the lessons and find them helpful, feel free to subscribe to the channel. Hopefully I'll see you in the next lesson, which is going to be the final lesson of the Nile Rodgers series. It's another Daft Punk tune, no prizes for guessing which one.